Well, greetings viewers and voyeurs, gothatfunk here. This is going to be a video about how I came to be living in the UK as an American and issues to do with that, which is basically inspired by the questions that I got asked in my last week's Q&A video. There was quite a raft of questions basically on the subject of me being an American in the UK. So if you're one of those people who asked one of those questions, they're all going to be answered in this video, whether or not I play it out like a answer video. Right, basically here's a story about how I came to live in this country. I started off in 1989. I was on the radio at the time as a DJ, and I was working a shift I wasn't even supposed to be working in. I got a request on the phone for a song by Yes, which happens to be my favorite band. Okay, and so I mentioned that to her, and she basically told me it was her favorite band as well. We got to talking about the band for a while. Then after I played her song about an hour later, she called me back, and we started flirting from that point onwards. Even though after we met a few days later, we didn't really get it together or anything. We were just friends for, I don't know, 4 or 5 months. When we did get together in July of '89, we were, head over heels and all that. And so we got married pretty quick. I got married in September. And moved to the UK in October of that year. And by the time we moved, end of October, my wife was already pregnant. And yeah, we got to this country, married and pregnant. And when she moved away, the last thing they said to her was, "Don't come home married or pregnant." And she came home both, which is quite funny. Anyway, when I first came to this country, I had a hard time getting a job on the radio, but with my wife expecting, of course, I was keen to get whatever kind of work I could. So I got a job working at a factory for a while, and I was in the middle of nowhere. It's a little sort of hick village, yeah. And the only thing really I felt really green in the country. I didn't really understand the rules in this country, and I was very American at the time. I mean, British people will know exactly what I mean when I say that, compared to how I am now. People used to say they could tell I was American by the way I walked, okay? So yeah. I was married to my first missus for 4 years. We had 2 kids during that time, and basically the broadcasting thing wasn't really working out in the UK the way I wanted it to, so I decided to try to get a re-education, and I was actually going to be a school teacher. I was going to university to get a degree. I was going to get a degree in English and also religious education. And then I was going to be a English and religious education teacher. That was my goal. And while I was away at university, my uni was in a different town to the one my wife and my kids and I lived in. So I was going back and forth during the week. And while I was away, basically she met another guy and left me. And while we were married, though, and even before we were married for that matter, in our many, many conversations, I made it very clear to her how my highest goal in life was to be a father, and so on. And, I also mentioned to her that I had some resentment towards my stepdad and my mom for the fact that I grew up without knowing my real dad. I didn't meet my real dad till I was an adult. And, well, that's not totally technically true, but it's, I didn't know him until I was grown up. Anyway, and I really, I said to her millions of times while we were married, I can't understand why anyone would do that to a child, I just don't think it's right. And anyway, so when we split up, I insisted on custody because I was, basically I'll be damned if someone's gonna, start fucking my wife and move into my bed and raise my kids in my house. No. So yeah, I was like, look, you're the one who wants out, so if anyone's leaving, you are. I said, if you want to have visitation rights, I'll be as lenient as I can practically be. I'll never say no if you want to see the kids, and I promise I won't move back to America. And because of the conversations that we had over the years, she knew that I meant those promises. I mean, it wasn't just that I was saying that shit to get what I wanted, and she knew that. And so she let me have custody without any kind of court fight. And so I was a single parent of a 2-year-old son and a 3-year-old daughter at that point. And of course I promised I wouldn't move back to the States. And we went back for Christmas, me and the kids, of '94. And I actually got offered a job at my old radio station. But I would have had to stay. I couldn't have gone back to the UK to get any of my stuff or even anything. I would have had to stay. I had to make up my mind pretty much on the spot. and I had to say no, and that was really hard. But you know, I did what was right for the children. You know, that's the most important thing, and that's exactly why I've stayed in this country, because I want my kids to know their mom. Um, I had my daughter live with me until she was 12, and at that point she decided she wanted to see what living with her mom might be like. And her mom raised her up until she was 17 when she moved out of her house, and she's been living on her own ever since, or with roommates, you know. So I stay in the UK because my kids are here, and because it was really important to me that they got to know their mom. So yeah. Uh, Ashes the Raven asked me how I feel about being an American in the UK. The only time it's ever been uncomfortable for me, Ash, is in basically from the middle to the end of 2002 and most of the way through 2003 in the run-up to and short aftermath of the Iraq War. It was extremely unpopular being American. For me, especially in this area, I'm surrounded by hippies. Which to me is not a bad thing at all, but it's there was an awful lot of chatter, very loud, obviously on purpose, so that I would hear it. And you know, sometimes I did turn around in a restaurant or on the bus and say, "Look, am I supposed to blame you for everything Tony Blair does? Because it's not fair to blame me for George Bush. You know, I mean, I didn't vote for the guy, and even if I did, I wouldn't necessarily support the war just because I voted for him. So, yeah." Anyway, moving right along, that brings me on to Bimbling Hill asks me, what do I think of UK politics? Well, in a nutshell, I'm not a big fan of parliamentary democracy. I don't like the British model, and I'm not very keen on very many of the politicians, especially the current batch. There were some decent politicians in the 90s, but you know, most of them seem to have died or retired. You know, Tony Benn, I've always had an immense amount of respect for, even though he's pretty much as lefty as you can get. He's a political sage, and I have a lot of respect for his opinions. And you know, Robin Cook died a few years back, and I thought he was one of those rare politicians who did seem to have some integrity, like genuine. He actually cared, you know, and that's something you like to see, and I wish I saw more of. But I'm not a big fan of the system here. But the thing about that is there's no such thing as a perfect system. I mean, the system in America is completely corrupt. So it's not as if I can say, hey, well, mine's better than yours. All I can say is I don't really like the way it works here. Which brings me on to D. Landon Cole asked me if I would ever give up my U.S. citizenship to become a British citizen. And the answer to that is no, Landon. I have the right to live here permanently so long as I'm not gone for more than 6 months. And basically, if I was the only thing therefore I have to gain by citizenship is the vote. And don't get me wrong, I cherish the right to vote, but at the moment I have the right to vote in America, and I think that's something I value at least as much as I would value the right to vote here, because I would relinquish that if I relinquish my citizenship. I would also, more importantly, relinquish my right to live in America if I wanted to. And not saying the vote here is nothing, but for the right to vote, you know, twice every 5 years or whatever it ends up working out to, no, that's not worth losing my right to live in America for. You know, as much as I respect the vote. Ambit 1980 asked me, how does it feel with 1 foot in the UK and 1 foot in the USA with your balls dangling over Quebec? Well, Amit, you probably thought I wasn't going to answer your question. I love it, though. I love the fact that my British friends know that I'm not one of these American sycophants who just will not criticize my own country or will not, you know, allow criticism of my own country. I allow it. If it's unreasonable, I'll say so, and if it's something I agree with, I will agree with it. You know, and I think that's how it should be. Frankly, you shouldn't have to stick up for something out of principle if the valid criticisms exist. And most of the criticism I'm talking about had to do with the run-up to the war, the short aftermath of the war, Abu Ghraib, and you know, all sorts of other stuff. But basically, I have a lot of respect for my friends' opinions, and most of them make pretty reasonable points. So I don't really mind the fact that when people want to come, when someone has a misapprehension about America or about Americans, they'll come to me. And I like that. And I actually get the same thing on the internet with some of my American friends. If someone wants the real lowdown about whether there's, you know, what the NHS is like here, for example, you know, or stuff like that, when the health bill was going through, people come to me and say, you know, what's it really like? And I have got nothing but good stuff to say about the NHS. I mean, it's not perfect, but nothing is, you know. Anyway, so yeah, I like that. I like the fact I'm the go-to guy for both sides. I think that's kind of cool. Q32PBuzz asks me, what irritates me about the English? Well, I should just say about the British, because this is basically true about all British people, whether they're Scottish, Welsh, or English. People here love to complain about the fucking weather. Now, you might say, hey, Paul, everyone complains about the weather sometimes. Yeah, not like the fucking Brits do, mate. Okay, honestly, this country, people complain about a fucking sunny day. I'm not even fucking exaggerating. You can count on it. If it's been more or less gray and rainy off and on, more or less, or partly cloudy, but mostly cloudy, more often than not for, months in a row, which is what winter's like here. Then when you get your first really sunny day where the temperature might rocket up to 70 degrees, which is 21 for my European friends, 70 degrees to me is not hot, okay? But I guarantee you, someone will say, oh, it's so hot. And they'll say it probably before even fucking 12. I mean, fuck. It fucks me off. That's not hot. Just because the sun is out and there's no clouds doesn't equal hot, people. Good grief. It really bugs me, man. I mean, complaining about the rain, I can put up with it. If it's snowing and slippery or dangerous, I can understand why people complain about that. I can understand people complaining about the wind or hail. I can understand complaining about actual heat. But you people don't know what heat is in this country. I'm sorry. It's just, yeah, that just bugs me, man. Godless Manitoban asked me a question that was repeated by several people. Would you ever move back to America permanently? And if not, why not? Well, the answer is I might. I might, for example, if I fell in love with an American woman, and, that would be great. I would be happy to move back. And I know I would move back for love, because love is what got me here. I'd move to fucking Antarctica if the woman I loved was moving to Antarctica and wanted me to go with her. That's just the way it is for me. So yeah, I would move back for love. I would also move back if one of my parents was, my parents are getting on a bit, and if one of them was like needing looking after, I would definitely move back to do that. I might not necessarily want to do it, but I definitely would do it. I mean, they're my parents, for fuck's sake, and there's nothing more important than your family. And from my point of view, how your life ends is almost as important as how you've lived it. So yeah. Oh, I might move back as well if I ever get kicked out of the UK. That could happen. Right, let's see here. Good one. Bushonomics asks me, what one aspect of living in the UK would you like to see in the US and vice versa? Well, I would like to see British young adults be a bit more ambitious, really. That's something, I mean, I'm not sure if it's the same in America now. Maybe it's just a sign of the times. But certainly when I moved away in the 80s, people were fucking ambitious. And I know when I was younger, I wanted to take a great big fucking bite out of life. Thank you very much. I wanted everything right now, more please. In fact, that's my motto, more of everything, please. That was my motto for most of my life. So yeah, and I wish young British people were more ambitious. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I'm acquainted with a lot of young adults because of my job as a body piercer. And for every one person I know in their late teens or early 20s who has any real sort of goals in life, I know 20 more who are perfectly content to play the Xbox and get stoned and have a part-time job. And they'll probably be doing that when they're 30, and I have a hard time respecting that. What aspect of the UK would I like to see in the US? Well, my favorite thing about British people, and again, this is true about Scots, Welsh, and English, is for the most part, people in this country have a very self-deprecating sense of humor. And I think we could really benefit from that in America. I think the fact that the people here take the piss out of themselves is both realistic and charming, and it also makes it less painful when other people take the piss out of them. Because people here don't pretend to be much more than they actually are in a way which I find far too common back home, frankly. And I think we could use a little bit of not taking ourselves quite so fucking seriously in America. So I would like to see that, a bit of more self-deprecation and just a bit more humility on that level. Last but not least, Rise of Superdog Away 96 asked me what's the #1 thing I miss about America. Well, that would be my job on the radio. I loved being on the radio. For someone with my ego and personality style, it's the best job in the world. I mean, they fucking pay you to play music and talk. It doesn't get any better than that. Anyway, I can see that I'm running out of time for this video, so I want to thank you all for putting up with such a long video. I hope anybody else who has questions that I haven't answered yet, don't worry, I'll get to them in my last questions and answer video, and if I don't, I'll answer it in a text. All right, got that funk. Thanks for watching. May all your ups and downs be ups.